Now, my big controversial take for this video is that I believe low Grandmaster to low Challenger, so from Grandmaster to Challenger, is actually easier than going from low Master to Grandmaster. Welcome everyone to my Master Tier Manifesto. I've put a metric ton of time into this video. Please sit back and relax and enjoy the show. There are 4 types of people who are going to thoroughly enjoy this video. Hard stuck Master Tier players, Diamond players preparing for that Apex tier climb, players who just simply want to develop a healthier relationship with high-low solo queue, and my personal favorite, League psychology enthusiasts. Now, Master to Grandmaster is hard, guys. And the metaphor we typically use is kind of Master Tier is base camp on the climb to Mount Everest, right? With Challenger at the very tip top. So, I want to just start by saying, right, for anyone who is attempting this climb, you already have my respect. You're going to get a lot of flack from high-low streamers, those elitist high-low bastards, those jealous wankers who are your low elo friends and whatever the hell it might be. You're going to get gaslit your entire journey, right? If you're really seriously strapping in to make that Master Plus climb, there are going to be a lot of haters. Hate from above, from those challenger players saying you're a Master Tier noob. You're gonna get flamed by the pro players saying Master Tier are just trash and they don't know how to play the game. You're gonna get flamed from people lower than you because they're gonna be kind of listening to the high elo community, the challenger players, and thinking that you aren't that good. You're gonna get gaslit from every single direction. And I just want to make it very clear: this climb is extremely difficult, and anyone that tells you it isn't is delusional. They're completely out to lunch. By the end of this video, you will exactly understand why that is the case. And the Master Tier climb will break most people. I've worked with literally hundreds of people who have done this climb, and nearly every single one gets brought to their knees, broken down, beaten to a pulp. So please, if you are going, through this climb, prepare yourself to go through hell and back. And a lot of you are going to disagree with what I say in this video. Some are going to call it cringe. I'm a fraud. Don't listen to Coach Curtis. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Look, the reality is everything in this video is just the truth. It is just the truth. Some of you are going to be ready to hear it. Some of you are not going to be ready to hear it. And, for people who are genuinely interested in going through this climb, this video, I guarantee, cross my heart and swear to die, is going to be an absolute game changer for you. And so just a few quick things. I hate doing this shit. I'm the type of person that if you want to listen to me, listen to me. If you don't, you can just piss off. I don't really give a shit. But why listen to me? I've got many, many, many people to Grandmaster and above, and to Challenger inside the Midland Academy. I've worked with pro players. I was a pro head coach for 3 years in a gaming house, worked with some of the best players from my region, represented OS on the international stage for a few years with Direwolves. And I've also dedicated my life, this last 1 month, purely to solo queue for this video, right? Because at the end of the day, I've been Challenger for a long time. I don't have anything to prove to anyone. I already have a lot of confidence in my game understanding, but I'm like, you know what? I took a break from the game in season 14 to build the Midland Academy, among other things, in the We Teach League ecosystem. And I said to myself, you know what? Let's go for Chal again. Let's see if I've still got it. Let's see if I can brush off the rust. I'm 30 years old now. I got a wife. I got a house. I'm a very busy individual. And, for me, it was a really important kind of journey to go through because I wanted to really deeply resonate and connect with what is it like nowadays to climb through Master Tier to Challenger? What challenges are people going to face? And, and this is me, right? the boomer, getting back on the rift, and having a crack. So again, I'm not here to say I'm the greatest player, right? There are way better players than me. I'm not an amazing player, but I think I know a thing or two, okay? So we're going to get into what is Master Tier, right? So this video is going to be focusing on that 0 to around 500-ish, 450-ish LP, okay? Now, although, many people watching this who are above 500, 600 LP, looking to maybe climb through Grandmaster or whatever, will get value from this video. Now, this is... what we're going to be covering in this video is actually going to be very relevant to a lot of other games. So if you've got friends who play Valorant or in this kind of similar Apex tier, Overwatch, a lot of your friends are going to get a lot of value from this video because the same trends kind of crop up in this Apex tier in nearly all online multiplayer video games. Now, my big controversial take for this video is that I believe low Grandmaster to low Challenger, so from Grandmaster to Challenger, is actually easier than going from low Master to Grandmaster. Okay, so by the end of this video, you're going to understand why exactly this is the case. And so sit tight, go through it. And by the end, we can actually have a proper discussion about why this is a reality. So the master tier skill misunderstanding. Now, in order to climb to GM, you need to do two things. You need to raise your skill ceiling, right? Literally learn new concepts, develop things such as better quality win con assessment, yada, yada, yada. And this is kind of symbolized by this little icon here, right? So every slide that you look at and every kind of section of this video, you'll see two icons. This one here on the right-hand side, which is referring to increasing your skill ceiling, and the one on the bottom, on the left here, which is referring to increasing your skill floor, raising your skill floor, which is essentially raising consistency, which we're going to go very deep on in this video. Most master tier players, right, don't understand this. What they will focus on is purely learning new concepts. They think that they've got all the basics down pat. They think that they've got it all sorted, right? So they don't focus on increasing their skill floor. They only focus on and predominantly focus on raising their skill ceiling. And they will do things in a game that are really quite good. They will do things in a game that are probably already Grandmaster level, but they will do things that are at a low diamond level or a high diamond level, which keeps them stuck at a master tier rank. And this is the way you want to kind of think about high level, climbing to Grandmaster. It's not just about learning new things. It's about also getting better at the basics. And that's a very humbling thing. So like I said, every slide will have an icon here representing what we're covering in that particular slide. So this is the low master horror story. And even before I get into this, take a look at this OPG. This is who this video is for. Look at this poor soul here. 1,400 games, 49% win rate, bottom of master tier, season 14, season 13. Look at this, just fluctuating at the bottom of master tier. This is a bloody horror story, okay? And the number one hurdle for these players is their inability, and I'm going to just straight up say it, their inability to accept that they are not as good as they think they are. They will go to any lengths to prevent this simple premise from becoming known to themselves. And this is how the low master horror story begins. It starts with number one. They climb to master tier. Typically, they're the best in their friendship group. They feel quite good about themselves. Yes, I've hit master tier. I'm in the apex tiers. I'm really good at the game, right? And they begin to lose games, right? But they're okay with it because they're new to master tier, they're new to the rank. There's a bit of a, what do they call it? Like a honeymoon period kind of for the new rank. But then they start to plateau for months, slowly growing more and more frustrated. They fluctuate maybe plus minus 200 LP. The excuses start coming out. I'm bored. I'm not really motivated anymore. The meta's kind of trash. The matchmaking, this and that and the other. But then they come back later on. Maybe they took a break from the game. They come back and they climb up 100, 200 LP and they just plateau, swinging up and down, plus minus 200 LP. And then they start to get really pissed, right? The tilt comes into play, blaming teammates, lack of accountability. It all starts to really get quite serious. Little do they know this entire time that fundamentally they are the reason they are their rank. They're just not good enough and they don't know why they are not good enough. They start to overemphasize auto losses. They get deeper and deeper and deeper into the narratives. They listen to the challenger players calling them master tier trash. They make new accounts. They duo queue. They take breaks. They quit. They come back. They rinse, repeat. Years and years and years of this happening, and you create crazy sophisticated narratives. And I'm just going to be serious for a second, guys. I'm going to be joking and talking shit throughout this video, but this is sad. It is really sad because if you've got to this point in your journey and you've played a lot of the game to get to master tier, right? You're so invested in your League of Legends experience. You're so invested in your league journey. It's so hard to put down the game. And this is where you get a lot of very, very toxic, egotistical, fragile individuals in master tier because they've invested so much time into the game. They don't get that same satisfaction in any other game they play. So they're stuck. They're stuck in this fucking horror story loop of toxicity and shame, and it's just ugly. It is ugly, and I hate seeing accounts like this. It actually makes me sick because I know how much pain and suffering that's actually going on, internally. And every now and then, the last thing here, a meta will suit their champion. Yes, their champ will perfectly suit the meta. They'll abuse something OP. Zaheen comes out or Mel comes out or whatever. They get a bunch of LP. They might even climb to 350, 400, 500, and then boom, that gets nerfed. They come crashing down and it all starts all over again. And the end result is you're left with a shell of a player filled with stage 4 issues, a toxic relationship with the game, filled with narratives. And this player typically embodies the following behavior: loves smurfing, makes new accounts, flames diamond players. I love this one. They always flame the diamond players. Hates on other low master tier trash. Struggles to accept help from others. struggles to want to pay for coaching because in their mind, they're already very good at the game. They can identify what's going wrong in their games. They don't need help. They think that if they've got this far, why get help now? They find convenient excuses such as region, role, champion, and they will go to any length to justify and hide these inadequacies. And like I said, they're too invested in their league journey to give up. So they're left in this perpetual state of anxiety, anger, and frustration. And they just hope they've got this dream, right? This is like this kind of conscious or subconscious dream that if they just keep playing and they just keep getting in the repetitions, they're just going to make it. Things will click and it'll be all good. It'll be all sunshine and rainbows. And they're going to finally get to the promised land. And the master tier truth here, guys, is that, similarly to Emerald, what you get in low master is a cesspool of toxicity, ego, and spite. It is a brutal, ugly rank tier where you'll be ground to a pulp if you don't conduct yourself properly. And Emerald is the same, because Emerald is this kind of moment, this point in the rank journey where you are now versing a lot of serious players and you are objectively very good at the game. So what happens is that people get stuck in Emerald because they think that they've got it all solved. They think that they're already good enough to get to Diamond. And there's just things that they don't understand about the game. And then some point in or another, they have to get coaching or whatever. They learn new concepts, they get to Diamond. They realize in hindsight, fuck, I actually wasn't really as good as I thought it was. And the exact same premise happens in Master. In Master tier, everyone thinks they're shit hot. They all think they're amazing at the game, but they just simply don't know that they're leaving so much on the table. Now, before we get into the specifics, there's a few crucial truths that you have to accept. You got to let go of the past, mate. Whatever rank you were in the past, let the fuck go, right? You were a season 13 and season 13 master is not season 15 master. You would have been challenger in seasons 5. Who gives a shit? It doesn't matter. The game evolves, all right? You're either getting better or you're getting worse. There is no such thing as kind of staying stagnant in League of Legends because the play base is always evolving. The game is changing. And no one actually gives a crap about you, right? You think the ladder revolves around you. You think that you're so important. You're going to be criticized. You're going to be laughed at. You're going to be judged. You know how many people hate me on my server who criticize me and talk shit about me? I don't give a fuck because I play the game my way. And the same thing is going to happen to you, right? Because everyone is hypercritical at everyone else, and everyone is super insecure, and everyone is super critical at everyone else but themselves. And when you start to realize that it's all just a joke, it's all just pathetic, and you start to just kind of just play your own game and accept your own truth, then it all becomes so much easier. It's just lighthearted. It's just fun. You just mute all and just play your game. And what I've noticed is that, and this is the way I frame it, is that you play League because it's your hobby. It's not anyone else's. If I don't play League to justify my time and my level of play to anyone else, nor should you, right? You don't play tennis because your Uncle Bobby said to play tennis. You play tennis because you want to play tennis. It's your fucking hobby, right? So don't fall into the trap of caring about anyone else's opinions, even if it's positive. People might add you and say, yeah, man, you played that game so well. Ha, you shit on that guy. It's like, you can't take only the good shit and not the bad. If you're going to take the positive stuff, you're also going to take the bad because you're listening to other people's opinions. And unless they're someone that is close to you, genuinely cares about you, or actually genuinely a coach, don't listen to anyone's shit. And the last little point here, just because you feel like you're playing well doesn't mean you are, right? Your emotions are going to trick you. You're going to, come out of some games and you're going to think, you know what? I feel like I played that game really well. But then if you don't actually get in the review and you don't actually think critically about what you're doing, you're not going to realize all of the things that you're massively griefing, all the ways you're griefing the game. The way I view it is like your emotions are constantly trying to trick you and convince you that you're doing enough and convince you that you're playing well, when in reality, you're likely not. Okay. So, do not get tricked by your emotions. Now, moving into the first section here, we have what I call the infamous master tier throw, in brackets, the AoE debuff. Now, this is actually from my own gameplay, and this is me griefing a game in master tier. When I was, starting this challenge and getting in my repetitions, I was playing at a master tier level. And this is one of the things that I had to iron out of my gameplay to actually reach challenger. So as you can see, if we look at the game state here, we're killing it. Game's very free. Top's dominating. I'm dominating. Jungle's really, really far ahead. This game is just the easiest game in the world to win, right? Atakan's coming up in a minute. All we got to do is just play around Atakan, don't do anything dumb, and the game's going to be a free win, right? And so what ends up happening here is I like deploy on mid. We get a bunch of kills here. Fast forwarding, I think we can kill the top laner. And, you lose a little bit of focus. You get a bit cocky. You start getting a bit excited, or you start, drifting off, or whatever. We'll get into this later about why it happens. But now you see, oh, there is someone. There's a fight. Let's go. Let's kill the Lilia, right? And you just go in on this really dumbass play. Your team's not really in position. You do this dumbass tower dive, and it's going to look different every single time. Lilia gets a massive bounty onto the Talia. I'm just fully overextended. I die. Luckily, Nami gets the bounty, but then Zaheen goes in and we all go in one by one and die. I think Zaheen dies after this. And it just makes the game so much harder than it needed to be. It's such a fucking unnecessary play. And I promise you, if you're a Master Tier player watching this, I guarantee you are the person making these dumbass plays. You're losing your focus. You're not calibrating the game in your lull states, and you're just randomly making idiotic decisions. These decisions that not only obviously change the whole state of the game in terms of giving bounties, but you know how they really grief the game? Everyone gets angry. Everyone is now pissed. There's like this AoE debuff in morale, this AoE debuff in terms of like everyone's attitude towards the game. People will start spam pinging someone. Someone will now get really tilted at your decision, and they're going to maybe go for a rage play. Someone's going to they're going to feel really pressured to get shit done. So they're going to like maybe take lower percentage plays. It makes everyone play worse. And so the mentality that if you really want to kind of climb through Master Tier, you got to stay on throughout the entire game. There can be none of these like random like, I've just lost focus and I'm just going to make some random play. You need to be, you need to stay the fuck on throughout the entire game. And again, this is something we're going to be talking a lot about throughout this video. Moving on to another clip here. Now we're going to be on the receiving end of a throw this time. So this was the game state. The game was not easy, right? My Nidalee is 3 levels down to the Hecarim. I think a lot of you guys have probably been in this situation before, looking at your shitty Nidalee jungle getting obliterated. I'm playing Swain this game, and the Sylas is starting to really ramp up. Civ is starting to scale. Our comp is, we're just struggling to win team fights. Honestly, we're just really struggling to win team fights. This game is not exactly easy. And honestly, if they just play very neat and tidy League of Legends around this Hecarim, buy time for their Civ, there's no way we're going to be able to contest those team fights kind of moving into the mid to late game. And so what ends up happening here is that I'm just kind of, clearing waves in top. And you'll see here in a moment, they just get really complacent. They get really, really cocky. This Hecarim loses his mind. He's maybe getting frustrated that he has to wait for Dragon or whatever the hell it might be. And they go for this unbelievably ridiculous dive here. And you'll see here in a moment, Janna comes through, Hecarim comes through, Ghosts in, and they greed their abilities, right? They actually fail to kill me before the heal goes off. All the heals come through and they just die, right? They overcommit, they die, right? Their Sever wasn't in location. They took this 3v4 or whatever it was, and they throw the game. They literally lose the game off that play. We get Baron and we just kind of win the game off this play. And it was one of those plays where I was thinking, you know what? I got lucky here, obviously. I didn't plan this out, but it was such a prime example of the enemy just getting complacent. They just threw the game. The game was in their back pocket, right? And if you look at this, and this Hecarim, this is the funny thing. The Hecarim would probably look at this game, right? The Hecarim would probably look at this game and they wouldn't even look at this play. They would already be like, oh, why did I have to play so well? My bot lane inted, or my top laner was losing to a Noone, or whatever the hell it might be. They will fail to take accountability for these key pivotal decisions where they threw the game. And you know what they'll say? They will say as well when they make this decision, oh yeah, I already know this is a basic mistake. They will fail to accept the reality of the quality of their decision-making. And it's this one lapse in focus. It's this lapse in focus of the game that is causing them to stay at this rank. This is not, again, this is a prime example of where they need to raise their skill floor rather than raise their skill ceiling. They're not learning anything necessarily new here, but they need to increase the consistency of what they currently do know. And these are really prime examples of just El Clasico Master Tier throws. And if a lot of you guys watching this, I promise you guys will see this in your games, basically nearly every single game, whether you're on the receiving end or you are the one actually committing this crime. So this section is called the Master Tier Focus Rollercoaster. Now we have a clip here from a 350 LP NA mid laner over in the mid lane academy. And, there's a sequence here where they pop off, right? The enemy overcommits, does some dumbass play. He's in the right place at the right time. And they end up just killing, I think, 3 or 4 of them. Boom. And Rift Herald's up in 10 seconds and they turn it into a Rift Herald. And great. And he was really utilizing his lull states. He was super focused. He was doing all the right things. And now he's just taking his foot off the gas. And he's just randomly A-ramming mid when there's a top wave that needs to be responded to. He's like dicking around the map, doesn't really know where he needs to go. He doesn't recognize that his MF is actually starting a recall. He's sitting on 1,500 gold in his back pocket. He doesn't have his ultimate here. Sylas doesn't have ultimate. And instead of actually pinging back here and getting his team excited about disengaging, he's looking for a fight. Let's go, guys. Let's fight. Our Jace is bot. Our MF is mid just off of a recall. We're completely desynced in tempo. We continue to go forward. Sylas now compensates for us. right? We go in, we die. Now everyone's tempo is desynced. And now what happens after this is that now Silas goes in by himself. Alistair goes in by himself. Here's the one by one special. And now later on, we're all desynced. MF dies on mid. We compensate for them. And the whole game just turns into an absolute schmozzle because we're just completely desynced with one another and everyone's going in one by one. Now, yes, there is an objective kind of like we can look at this through kind of like a transition period lens and we look at it through the underlying macro, yada, yada, yada. We can do that. But fundamentally, what I notice with a lot of Master Tier players is that their focus is like a roller coaster throughout the game. They will go through moments where they're really fucking locked in. It's like, all right, I know my win conditions. I'm aware of where everyone is. I know what my job is. And like they're super locked in, right? Then something positive happens. Right? They're at an all-time high, like we were kind of mentioning before with the Master Tier throw. And then they just get complacent. They take their foot off the gas and la, 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 la. I'm in my own little fairyland. The game's over. And then what happens is that a negative event happens, right? In this case, they overstay. They make a dumbass decision because they've lost focus and they die. And then they go back to the roller coaster, right? They're in this because they've lost their focus. And then they're like, oh, wake up. Oh, man, that was such a bad play. Now the game is so difficult. I've just given a bounty. Shit. And then they lock in again and they start to focus up again. And it's just this roller coaster of just focus, right? Sometimes they're really locked in. Other times they take their foot off the gas. And then it directly correlates with the quality of their decision making. They get fed, right? They get a bounty. They die and then rinse, repeat. And it's just this terrible, disgraceful kind of roller coaster of emotion, which is fundamentally keeping them at their rank. Again, tying into raising that skill floor. This is why they are at this. This is one of the major contributing factors as to why they're at this elo bracket. They cannot accept reality that they are just losing focus throughout a game, guys. So this is a very, very practical thing. You need to stay on. There is no on and off. There is no roller coaster of emotion here or focused. You need to stay on and mega focused every single second, every single deployment, every single lull state throughout the game to be consistent in this elo bracket. Now, a common question is, what does the Master Tier kind of lack of accountability kind of mindset actually look like? What does this tangibly look like? How are these Master Tier players, how are they using this mindset, to a detriment to like really lose games? And, I had to play jungle secondary and I'm a terrible jungler. I was just like playing Pantheon and learning how to clear, right? So let's just ignore that for a moment, all right? I know I'm dog shit at Pantheon jungle. So my clear is way too slow here. But the reality is that as a laner, you need to make do with what situation that you're in, right? Now, in this scenario, we didn't know where the enemy jungler was. We don't know if they did a bot to top to bot. We had no level 1 wards, right? So my bot lane was a Vel'Koz Braum here, right? These are just classic Master Tier players. And what ended up happening here, they had no information on Aatrox, yet they went for an all-in, completely blind as to where the jungler is. And so the Aatrox did just the most boring full clear into a gank because they just started all-inning without any vision. And then they have the audacity to spam ping their jungler and question mark pick their jungler. The Braum has the audacity to spam ping their jungler. Now, this is such a fascinating kind of psychological insight because this is why these players are stuck. Because yes, their jungler did an incredibly slow clear. Yes, their jungler maybe could have snuck a scuttle. Yes, there's things that their jungler could have done differently. But the lack of accountability, the fact that you have no idea where the jungler is, you're going for a complete blind all-in, you just get randomly double killed by a full clear jungler, is sickening. That is why they are their rank. The fact that they are shifting accountability and can't accept reality of the situation, they can't deal with the hand that they've been dealt, and their lack of adaptability to the situation is why they are their rank. This is what it looks like tangibly. And you will see this in every single one of your games. Their jungler, or some teammate, XYZ teammate on the team is doing something that they fundamentally disagree with. And instead of actually being like, how do I work with the hand that I've been dealt? They just have a hissy fit and start blaming everyone else on their team apart from themselves, for how they contributed to the situation. Let's take a look at another example. Okay, so very basic clip here. I've just been full clearing as a Pantheon. Their jungler's been doing the exact same thing. We had information on the enemy jungler's clear. Games just chill, right? The game's very, very, very chill. And so at this stage, we know that both junglers, because we've just been clearing opposite, the Aatrox is clearing this way, I'm clearing down, I'm on my way to potentially influence bot, and their jungler is going to be pathing onto the top side, okay? Now, in this scenario, right, we know that their jungler is highly likely on this side of the map. Now, Garen in this scenario, the wave's beautiful. The wave's actually slow, but bouncing out to the Garen. He has to understand that his jungler's on the other side of the map. If he's actually got any semblance of jungle tracking, he should also know that his jungler's highly likely on the top. The enemy jungler's on the top side of the map here. And now with me looking to influence his, heavy trading bot side, he now starts heavy trading, even though the wave is coming into him on the weak side. So see here in a moment, he starts heavy trading, even though the wave was actually slow building into him. Darius goes for an all-in. Garen gets very, 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 very low. Obviously, now that, the Aatrox has done a bot to top, so the Aatrox is going to be on that side of the map. I can't really get there in time to defend that dive. You just heavy traded on weak side. Now Garen gets dove by the Aatrox and then starts, he ends up, pinging, the jungler, pings the Aatrox jungle and pings me as the Pantheon jungle. And this was such a fascinating, when I saw this, I'm like, what the hell is going on with your mentality? How are you? This is the definition of not working with the hand that you've been dealt. Your jungler is pathing away from you. Your wave is coming into you. It's your responsibility as a laner to, again, work with that situation. You should know that the jungler is going to be topside. You should know that you're on the weak side. You should know that you shouldn't heavy trade on the weak side. This is just fundamentals 101. But again, because the Garen is salty that he didn't get path towards, he's blaming the jungler for disagreeing he's just fundamentally disagreeing with the way the jungler's played, and he's having a hissy fit instead of taking accountability for the mistakes that he's making and not adapting to the situation at hand. And this is what League of Legends is all about. This is what Apex tier League of Legends is all about, right? As any rank, you need to adapt to the situation at hand. But the key difference, right, guys, and you'll see this specifically in the ranks of Emerald and Master tier, is that because in their mind, they are right, they are the best player, they've got this crazy ass ego, they're right and everyone else is wrong, they can't fundamentally change their behavior. They can't take accountability for this mistake. And I can absolutely guarantee you that this Garen is never going to climb. And I actually look, this guy has been like Master tier for multiple seasons. He's been I think he's got like 3,000 games sitting in like 300 LP Master tier for a reason. And it's so, so sad. It's so, so, so sad. Like a challenger Garen, right, in this scenario, they would know that they're on the weak side. They would know that they're getting pathed away from. And yes, they may not agree with the way the jungler is playing it, but they're still going to adapt to the scenario. They're not going to heavy trade on weak side and get dove. That is the key difference. And this is a prime example of how that mindset manifests and actually leads to an inability to learn and, again, raise that skill floor. Now, this one is a very, very important section, guys, titled Find Your Meta and Find Your Truth. Meta, as many of you are probably aware of, especially in the Apex tiers, is an incredibly important part of the journey, but not in the way that most of you would expect. If you want to push Master Plus, you need to understand how you personally are going to deal with the meta. Now, the real way that meta is calculated in terms of practically for climbing solo queue is three things. Yes, there is an objective meta, right? Things that revolve around numbers, stats, OP champions, etc., right? And you look at a lot of high pro players who make tier lists or high level players who make tier lists, they will be able to tell you the objective meta. But then there is two other things that a lot of people don't understand. What server do you play on? What time of the day you play? What's your champion pool? What are your strengths and weaknesses as players? And this is where a lot of people kind of lose their mind because, and this is, again, I'm just going to give you the uncomfortable truth. NA is not EU. EU is not Korea. Korea is not China. China is not OS. Every single server has a differing meta because everyone plays on these servers differently. And this is why you'll find some people get success in Korean solo queue and they don't get success in O solo queue, or they get success in Korea and not in NA, and NA and not in EU. You will find people thrive in different environments because their champion pool and the way they interpret the game kind of interacts differently with a particular server. So like when you're trying to develop your understanding of the meta, don't look at some bullshit external tier list. You're not going to find the truth in some Vega V2 LS or like even my tier list, even the tier list that we put out in our school community. That's not where you're going to find the truth. You're going to find the truth based off your anecdotal experiences, the server you play on, the time of day you play on. Everything is altering, right, the most effective tactics available in your particular situation. And like even here, the specific elo bracket that you're in. If you're sitting at 200 LP in Master Tier in NA, you're not playing the same game as someone that is 1K LP in NA. You're not even playing the same game. The champs that are effective in 200 LP are not going to be effective in 1K. Vice versa. Some champions in 1K LP may not be effective in 200 LP. And that is a tough pill to swallow. But it's just the reality, guys. just suck it up. You know, there is no such thing as just like one objective holy grail meta that you can just like follow and blindly think this is objectively the best picks. Because, and if you guys are fucking honest with yourself, you will know this as well, because you'll be like, they said that in the tier list that this champion is really strong, but in my games, it feels like shit. Or I feel like I never win with that champion, but in this server in Korea, they're all playing that champion. But in my games, it feels like shit. Be honest with yourself, guys. Stop being delusional, right? Accept your reality, your truth, your meta. Now, the process that I find my meta, and this is what I do practically every single year to find my champion pool and alter my champion pool based around the meta, is I start with a very basic pool and I gather data over a 2-week period. How are my games playing out? What are the frequent picks in my games? What does scaling feel important? Does early prior feel important? Does CC feel important? I start to gather data based off like this initial starting pool. And then I'll start to iterate my champion pool via champion pool cycling. Recently I swapped Victor for Ryze, and then I swapped Ryze for Syndra, and I'm just gathering more data. How is this champion feeling? How is that champion feeling? How are my games feeling out? Does TF work? Does this work? Does that work? And you will find, just practically, anecdotally, based off your evidence in your games, certain champions will feel good. Now, this may not, this sometimes will correlate with what you see in some objective tier list and somewhere. Other times it may not. And this is the thing as an Apex tier player, you need to develop your own personal compass in terms of dictating what feels good in your games. Okay, very, 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 very important. And if you have any other questions about this, let me know in the comment section below. And a lot of people are going to be pissed about this, but you know, tough titties. It is reality. It's what works. It's what works practically. Now, understanding the complexity of Apex tier matchmaking. Now, if you are from OS or any other small server minor region, there'll be a whole separate section at the very end of this video. So that's where I would go if you're from those regions. In the Apex tiers, you can get extremely funky matchmaking. This is due to the extreme low number of players in the Apex tiers, but also there have been recent changes to matchmaking over the past few weeks. And I'm actually, to be honest, you know, small aside here, I'm pretty upset at the direction they've taken matchmaking. You know, very TLDR, right? They're more inclined. They're trying to get faster queues. And they've extended kind of the parameters in which they use to actually create matchmaking, which means you get wildly unbalanced matchmaking or widely differing skills in your matches. That's a whole discussion for another time. But you must understand how matchmaking works in order to manage your expectations and prevent mental implosions. At a very high level, there are 4 types of queues that you're going to pop into. Balanced, right? All similar ranks. So everyone's kind of a similar rank and you must win those games. Scattered high elo on both teams. You might get maybe a few high elo on both teams. But for the most part, then everyone else is low elo. You are the low elo personally amongst all the other high elo, and you are the high elo amongst the low elo. So these are different types of queues. And there are a few examples. This is AJ from the Mid Lane Academy, one of our fellow coaches, and I also helped him get to Challenger in the NA server. You know, this is a full Challenger lobby. Great. You're going to be in games like this where you are matched with people that are completely aligned with your level of play. And these feel amazing. These are the best lobbies to be in because everyone's playing at their limit. Everyone's mental stack is overloaded. You know, typically these are a lot more balanced in terms of the way they play out. They're less one-sided. This is where people really start to get better at the game. Then you've got these games where like you are the high elo amongst other lower elos. So he's the AJ, the only challenger on his team, paired with some master tiers and grandmasters versus another challenger. So it's kind of like challenger versus challenger. And these are the games where it's like who can gap their counterpart more. So AJ has to obviously outperform this guy and dominate this guy, and this guy needs to dominate this guy, right? And so these are the games where if you are the high elo in these games, there's a lot of pressure on you. These are not exactly easy games to play, and they will fundamentally feel very differently to the games where everyone is kind of the same rank. And then you have games like this is me. Look at the wide champion disparity here. Challenger with like a diamond and a master tier versus diamonds. Versing a full team of master tiers. This is another way that Riot are kind of, you know, balancing matchmaking, which I fundamentally disagree with. And, you know, these are games where guys, you know, this is the Syndra versus me, a master tier versus a challenger. This is a very hard game for the Syndra. Right. And the Syndra, they shouldn't necessarily expect to win their lane. But, you know, if they can kind of neutralize and they can kind of simply do their job, a lot of the time they're going to have other people who are gapping their lane opponent, which is going to really kind of even out the game or make the game feel more reasonable, right? Theoretically, this Grandmaster player should outperform this guy, maybe this Master tier player outperforms this guy, whatever. That's kind of the way the matchmaking is balanced out. So, you know, fundamentally, guys, what I'm trying to get across here is that it's delusional to think that you're going to be in kind of this even matchmaking, like even skill games every single game if you're in the Apex tiers. It's not going to happen, especially if you're in the minor region, but even in NA. We're seeing this currently in NA. If you're lucky enough to be in Korea or EU, this is less of a challenge and less of a problem. But if you're specifically from NA, I know this for a fact is definitely a problem. As we're seeing before with AJ, he's from NA and he experiences these problems. So the skill set that you need to develop here is that you need to understand that not every game is going to play out the same. And rather than just being angry and, raging at Riot Games for that reality, you need to accept the hand that you've been dealt. And not every game is going to feel the same. And you're not going to get the same learning from every single game. But the way I view it in these games where I'm not getting challenged, these are a test of the quality of my fundamentals. I don't need to go crazy to win this game, but I need to be very neat and tidy. I need to be very disciplined. I can't afford to make basic mistakes. And because I know that my mental stack is not going to be overwhelmed. Everyone is in this game is below my level of play. So I should be able to play this game to a very, very high level. And if I'm making basic mistakes in these sorts of games, you're not going to climb. You're simply not going to be able to deal with these sorts of lobbies. So again, uncomfortable conversation, but I just wanted to kind of bring this to the forefront and help you guys understand what sort of lobbies you guys are going to be facing. Now for the one mistake misconception. Now, when I start to talk to master tier players, they'll start molding when they hear things like, you can't make mistakes like this. You can't make these basic mistakes, because you know what? They always counter with something like, but these challenger players, they die too. Are you delusional? Like when I play with these high level players, they make these mistakes all the time. But what they fundamentally don't understand is that the quality of the deaths is a huge thing, right? If you look at a master tier player, be honest, really look at a master tier player. They are dying and making mistakes that are very low quality, very low value. So the mindset you got to have is the way you die matters more than if you die. And the clip that you'll be watching as this is going is a prime example of someone being very difficult to kill. Yeah, they will die, right? They will die. But fundamentally, they're very difficult to kill. And if they do die, they're burning a lot of resources, a lot of summoners, a lot of ultimates, in which case they create a lot of space for other people in the game. They're creating space for other people, other opportunities for their teammates to kind of make up the difference. So if you're in Master Tier, guys, don't just look at how many deaths you're having. Look at the quality of the underlying deaths that are actually going on. And were they low value? Were they high value? Were you making the enemy sweat? Were you not? These are the sorts of questions that you should be asking yourself. The checking out master tier mentality. Many low master tier players see plays that they don't agree with, often give up and check out, especially in games where they are the high elo, popping into diamonds like we were mentioning before, right? You might be a master tier player popping in with a bunch of low diamonds. And in these lobbies, their egos are through the roof. They can't possibly respect or empathize with these other players. So when they see that diamond player go for this play that in their mind is idiotic and stupid, they just give up. They just check out. They just start typing at this guy, you're trash diamond player, or something like that, something along those lines. And even if they're not typing it, that's what they're thinking. And rather than kind of taking on that burden of playing a difficult game and kind of carrying the boats and the logs, as someone like David Goggins would say, they take the easy way out. Oh, screw these guys. They don't deserve the win. Why do I have to carry these piss lows? These guys are so bad. I can't possibly play with these players. And they just give up. They just lose that game. It's a game that they could win if they take max accountability, be really on point with their decision-making and play to a high level. But they just can't do it. They can't emotionally handle the heat because their egos won't allow them to fundamentally respect everyone that's in their game, agree to disagree, and just get along with the game. Just get on with it, mate. Just fucking get on with it. And, this checking out master team mentality is a difference maker. Honestly, this mentality alone is what probably printed me 300 LP. I was winning games that no one else would win because people would just check out. But I'm staying engaged. I'm communicating intent. I'm trying to get my team excited about giving neutral objectives, staying engaged, and I win games that other people wouldn't. And that is a big difference maker. Master tier players are masters at self-sabotage. And if we can actually take a look here at this OBGG, you can kind of see 326 LP over a whopping 3,000 games, and look at this. They peaked at 820 and they fluctuated 500 LP here. And they've been, fluctuating in Grandmaster Master for years now. And these are the players They just have these massive LP swings, these massive skill bell curves, because of one of the big reasons that their masters at self-sabotage. You will pop into extremely hard games where the system is testing you. Maybe you are that one high elo player versus, with paired with a bunch of lower elo players and you have to carry. You might be in a lobby where you are the lowest elo player paired with a lot of high elo players and you will get obliterated. And if you get railed in that game and you carry that frustration into a future lobby that you should win, it's game over. It's GG. Because remember, guys, this is where the 30-30-40 rule that I invented comes into play. Some of your games are going to be auto wins, some of them are going to be auto losses, and some of them are going to be in your control. But if you're carrying the frustration from the auto loss into the game that is in your control, you're never going to climb. You're never going to get out because you're just fundamentally breaking the system. And so this is what we kind of talk about, this whole idea about emptying the recycle bin. Every game that you lose where you have kind of mental baggage, right? That recycle bin is filling up. And if you don't let go of that past shit, if you don't make peace with that, you don't actually understand what happened in those games and let go of the past, you're constantly going to be stuck in this cycle of despair and carry on that frustration to future games, which is going to lower your level of play. Let the hell go, guys. Empty the recycle bin. Now, the less competent you are at letting go of the past, the higher your LP swings will be. And so the funny ass trap that I see is you'll see things like, but I did well against this high level player. I did well. I beat this challenger player in lane or this grandmaster player in lane. So why are they that rank and I'm not, right? I deserve to be that rank. And this is completely delusional because did they factor in the matchup? Was it an easy matchup? Did the junglers interfere in the lane? Was it just a very easy draft for you and it was a very hard draft for them? Did you just get a bit lucky? There was an early 2v2, stars aligned, you racked up an early kill, maybe you had winning bot lane, or maybe that player just had an off day, right? Can you really realistically replicate this? If you're versing this player 10 times, would you fundamentally outplay them 10 times? No, hell no, right? Because the system never lies. You are the rank you are because of your level of play. Now, you may not see, right, why that player is that rank in that one game, but in other games that you're maybe not in it, they're performing well because sometimes there are certain personalities and certain play styles that don't gel well together. There's, I'm going to throw Nathan under the bus here from the Broken by Concept podcast. He has a very kind of unique way of playing the game with Rek'Sai. And he's a player that will look like the worst player in the world some games because he just fundamentally doesn't respond well with certain personalities or way certain people play the game. But other people he plays with, he'll pop off and look like the best player in the world. This is why some people, flame the hell out of him thinking he's trash and other people think he's like a genius. So like certain players will have certain strengths and weaknesses that will actually pair well or, less so well with other people. So moving on here, so don't be so quick to judge. Every player has differing strengths and weaknesses, like I was mentioning before. As a 150 LP player, you might be better than a 500 LP player in laning. You might be better micro-wise. You might be able to take better quality trades, but you're going to still lose to them at net value, like over a large sample size of games, or they're just going to win more games than you because maybe they have a better understanding of the big picture. The rank system doesn't lie. Everything makes sense. And if it doesn't, it's just your view of reality. You can learn from anyone. Don't fall into the trap of, but I shit on this guy. See, look, this is proof. This is proof that the system is broken. That I beat this guy and he's just getting lucky, or he's whatever XYZ bullshit it is. Like that is a very, very kind of slippery slope to go down. And it's on this topic here of like, you can learn from anyone. What I mean by that is, you might be the 400 LP player popping into a Diamond 1 mid laner, okay? You can learn things from that Diamond 1 player. Maybe that guy's really good at that champion. Maybe he has a lot of champion mastery. Maybe he's actually quite good mechanically. Maybe he's pushing you in certain areas. Like, don't be so much of a loser to assume that you're better than this person in every single way. Like, you might be, but you may not. You don't know. So be willing to learn from anyone and anything. And that's a really kind of powerful mindset, that kind of student mindset. The master tier autopilot trap. How many of you have had those instances where you're just like, why did I do that? That was so bad. I just greed this game. I made this game so much harder than it needed to be. And the reason this happens is because what got you to this rank in the first place was mass repetitions, right? A sophisticated muscle memory. All of us need to rely on habits, muscle memory, developing this sort of thing over time, right? But the reality is that you will win games autopiloting, right? You're going to get lucky. Refer back to some of the previous slides where you might just have a lucky draft, a lucky, sort of matchmaking, and you might win 1 or 2 games with autopiloting. But that doesn't mean that's enough to climb. And this is the trap that people fall into. They win a game via autopiloting, They then lose a game via autopiloting. They act confused because why didn't they win the second one if they won the first one? And they start justifying to themselves that they just need to get in more repetitions to fix it. So the fact that you can actually win games via autopiloting is what fundamentally breaks people's brains, because it's like, well, how is that possible? If I'm winning this game playing like this, not really trying that hard, that must mean I'm really, really good. But they don't realize that they're just in a lucky game. They're in a great lobby. Maybe the stars align. Maybe they're versing someone on their secondary role, autofill. Maybe the game just panned out a particular way that you know how to handle. Maybe your muscle memory knows how to respond to those particular scenarios. But like, that's where a lot of people get gaslit. They pretend, or they think subconsciously, that if I'm able to do it in this game, I can do it in every game. And when it doesn't work, they get confused and they think that they just need to keep getting in more repetitions so they can keep having more of those games where they win via autopilot. And every single one of those games that they happen, right, when this actually happens, it constantly like feeds that toxic narrative that all they need to do is get more games in. Pool matters. Stop lying to yourself. You can climb to challenge in many ways. You'll see OTPs, you'll see true tricks, you'll see some weird, people with weird ass pools. But for the average player, the average Joe, having a diverse pool of 3 to 4 champs to cover many bases in draft will be the easiest and most reliable way. And on top of that, it also develops holistic game understanding, because when you're viewing the game through multiple lenses, your understanding of the game gets broadened, gets deepened, and more sophisticated, right? But your pool fundamentally must be able to respond to the meta. So I recommend the following process. If the draft felt bad, ask yourself the question, is there anything in your pool that can respond to this draft? If yes, great. That means you need to keep developing more champion mastery, keep getting in more repetitions, and get better at that champion such that you can kind of pilot those games. If no, then chances are you need to refine your pool and find what that hole is, and then you just simply rinse, repeat. And until, right, 95% of your drafts, you should be able to have a very good, solid response to a wide variety of these drafts. And that's exactly the process that I follow. Now, moving on to the micro check. There is a baseline level of micro spacing tethering that every laner must have. And look, this can be broken down if need be. I've actually got a whole video on my YouTube talking about mechanics. So if you feel like this is a limiting factor in your ability to climb, check out this video. Hopefully there's a pop-up here. Most people who struggle with micro tend to sweep it under the rug, or just claim that other people that have kind of mechanical ability claim it's talent. It's not. They're all individual skills. They can and need to be developed. Things such as short, long clicks, horizontal, vertical movement, creating and breaking patterns. You don't need to be Chovy, right? But you do need to have a solid level of competence mechanically. And a hot tip here, guys, if you find yourself losing trades or prio in moments that feel awkward, chances are that you probably need to develop your micro or investigate what's actually going wrong fundamentally with your trading. So something to keep an eye on, guys. Now for one of my personal favorites, this is what I call the 1,000 puzzle mindset. Every single game you lose or win is filled with puzzles that you just don't know how to solve, either logically, right, game theory wise, or execution wise. And so a challenger can solve the puzzles that you can't. A game that feels fundamentally very hard is just filled. That just basically means it's filled with puzzles that you don't know how to solve. Okay, so rather than talking about puzzles in this esoteric way, let's go into an example of what a puzzle looks like. So this here is a clip from a master tier player over in NA. I think he's currently sitting 400 LP, something like that. And if we kind of lay the groundwork here, he can kind of see that his support Tarek is going for like a roam on top side. The enemy actually have Rift. It looks like they're sieging bot tier 1 now with the Rift. And the enemy has a Bard that's kind of hovering on the bot side of the jungle here. And he's 4-1 as a major carry as Syndra. And so he feels like, oh, I can actually probably defend this. Yeah, I'm Syndra, I should be fine. Doesn't anticipate the Bard. Bard comes through, Asol comes through, Jax comes through, he dies and ends up losing the tier 2 and ends up being a very big kind of, pivotal factor moving into the mid game. And so this is a puzzle, right? His name is Gromp. So Gromp here just didn't have the game understanding or the foresight to be able to solve this puzzle. He thought that he could defend it, but he was rudely awakened by the fact that he couldn't, right? So then, okay, so this is the puzzle. The puzzle is, how do I solve this particular problem next time? So view League, and this is as an Apex tier player, this is the way I view it. This is the timeline of your game. every kind of these moments are filled with puzzles. It might be a 2v2, it might be a dragon fight, it could be a rift fight, it could be an invade, or it could be a decision with a lane assignment. These are all just individual puzzles. Okay, now if you start to break it down into individual puzzles, you can actually go over these scenarios. I've talked about extensively review frameworks that you can use on my channel if you like, so things like the micro macro framework. But this is a way that you would go to this moment. Okay, I didn't know how to solve this. Knowing what I know now in hindsight, what would I have done? Okay, I might have just traded off the tier 2. Maybe I would have been a little bit more respectful with my positioning and anticipated the barter. Okay, and you can start to really get into the weeds of the details and the specifics of how you contributed to this play and what you would do next time and how you would come to that conclusion. And so when you start to break down the game into these puzzles, what's going to happen every single time you can walk away from this game, having solved this puzzle, you've gotten 1% better. And this philosophy actually started from, there's this kind of hedge fund guy named Ray Dalio. And he has a book called Principles. And in this book, he talks about kind of his philosophy when he developed his like trading principles, right? His principles becoming an amazing investor. And he had these principles where he had this philosophy, where he would have an event, this painful experience, basically, right? And he would reflect on this painful experience. And once he reflected on this painful experience, he would get a gem of learning. He would call it like a gem, like you would collect it in a game, right? Like you play Donkey Kong or some shit, you kind of collect a gem. And if you collect enough of these gems, eventually that would push you to the next level. That would unlock a new area in the game, or it would unlock something. It's exactly the same thing in League. Every single time you solve one of these puzzles, you get a gem, right? And then you collect enough of these gems, you get enough of these morsels of information, these morsels of like knowledge, you collect enough of them, that's going to allow you to push to the next ELO bracket. That might be from 200 to 300, or 300 to 400, or 400 to 500, because you'll start to notice trends. You'll start to accrue a mass amount of knowledge, a mass amount of muscle memory. You'll start to develop your execution, pattern recognition. Things will become tighter. You'll be able to anticipate more things. And that is fundamentally the reason why, I may not be the best player. I may not have the best execution, but because I've collected so many of these morsels of information, I've thought critically, I've taken accountability, and I've solved these puzzles, that's what's fundamentally allowed me to be a consistent kind of challenger player or achieve a high level of rank, even though I'm a 30-year-old boomer. So that's the 1,000 kind of puzzle mindset. And one more thing I'll add, this is actually why in the Mid Lane Academy, we have this functionality where we have a thing called VOD questions. So you can, instead of actually going to a full coaching session, you can actually post a clip and get coaches to take a look at a specific play and be like, hey guys, this play here, I didn't really know how to solve this puzzle. How would you guys solve this puzzle? And you can get feedback from a high level coach, boom, get the answer. And this has been really game changer for a lot of our Apex tier kind of Master Plus clients in the Mid Lane Academy and across all our academies, because it allows us to kind of solve the puzzles with them and hold their hand through the puzzle solving process to develop their game understanding and more effectively solve these puzzles. Because just because you see it as a puzzle doesn't necessarily mean you're going to know the answer. Right? You may have a answer, but it may not be the best answer. But in the MLA, we can give you the best answer to streamline that learning journey. Secondary role matters, guys. Especially nowadays, if you're a mid laner, mid lane is a very contested role. People will be required to play secondary role to a solid level. And look, the reality is that if you're in a smaller server, this is going to matter a little bit more. If you're in a larger server, maybe a little bit less. I mean, maybe next season, 2026, people are swapping to like top lane and jungle and shit. So maybe mid lane will become less popular. But the reality is that, I think as an Apex tier player, you need to be able to at least baseline do your job in your secondary role. You don't need to be able to carry. Obviously, if you can, it helps. But just being able to baseline do your job and not int, goes a long way. So just very simple, not overly complicated, is something that will help you in the long run. Now for the mid-game difference maker, this is what I call transition periods, one of the most important concepts as an Apex tier player that you need to understand. So a lot of people are very good at making these big plays, right? They win the big team fight, they win the big skirmish, cool. But they really don't know how to handle themselves in between the plays. And this is what I call transition periods, okay? So here, Jaeger, we actually saw this clip before when it came to losing focus. He won this play and didn't know where to go. He's like, do I go mid? Do I go bot? Do I go top? What do I do? Where do I go? Do I reset? Do I not reset? Do I swap lane assignments? Do I not? Do I stay on the map? Do I not? And he starts dicking around. He's being super, super inefficient, ends up going top, stays on the map for ages on 1,500 gold, overstays, takes this weird fight, even though, Silas doesn't have ultimate, he's below half HP. His MF, who is a big win con, is collecting waves on tier 1, ends up dying, and the whole game turns into an absolute fiesta, right? And if we're getting really, really critical, the moment the play was done, we need to already back here know exactly what's next, right? Where do we go? Right. And so the speed of your decision making matters a lot. So if this is the timeline of your games, you have these major pivotal moments in the game, big team fight wins, you win an Atacon fight, whatever, yada, yada, yada. That kind of 20 to 30 seconds after these plays, these transition periods are crucial in terms of efficiency, tempo, fixing lane assignments, good resets, these sorts of things. So in hindsight, right, a big difference between this guy being 350 LP and maybe 600, 700 or 800 LP is his ability to leverage those transition periods. He should have recognized instantaneously after this play that he doesn't need to go mid. MF's going to cover mid. He should instantly run top, collect that wave, collect the next wave, collect the tower, and after Rift insta recall, sync up his bases with the Jace and the MF, and then get back on the map with tempo. That would be the best usage of the transition period. And I don't want to get too caught up in the weeds in this one, but just fundamentally, if you're watching this as a master tier player, what are you doing in your transition periods? The amount of overstays, griefed lane assignments, inefficient shoving of side lanes, all this wasted time is a hugely detrimental thing that you'll be able to see if you just look objectively about what you're doing in your mid games. Now, if you want to learn more about this concept, I actually have a really good video on my YouTube emphasizing Phantasm, and he actually shows firsthand how clean his transition periods are, and it's a big, big difference maker in my opinion as to why Phantasm is so successful in solo queue. Now for the boring stuff, a lot of you guys are already going to roll your eyes. Communication, right? Communication, command and mindset. Look, guys, a lot of you are just going to be taking a backseat. Sit back, relax, do well in lane, pull up a beach chair, take a vacation. But that's not the way you're going to be able to reliably win games, right? You can win games like that, but it's going to be hit or miss. If you really want to streamline your climb, you got to communicate shit. Communicate the next neutral objectives. Communicate what you want to do. Have your intention felt, even if the play is delusional, even if you're wrong. Right? Don't be afraid to look like an idiot. Make decisions. Play with conviction. It's so easy to hide, do the bare minimum, and let other people take control. But that way, you're not really learning. You're not really having an impact on the direction of the mid game. You can't automatically assume that people know exactly what you think, and that's what a lot of master players do. They think, "Oh, this play is so obvious. My jungler should know what I want here, or my team should never fight this." But you didn't say anything, mate. Communicate your intent. So very simple, but it's an obvious one, but a lot of people don't do this, and it is an absolute game changer. Look, consistency is not a buzzword. You will hear it thrown around a lot, but I promise you consistency matters a lot. And here are a few questions that you guys should be truly honest, with about yourself. Do you jungle track first clear every game? Do you track every major support roam timer? Do you constantly recalibrate the map state and win con in every lull state? Do you consistently call off or on neutral objectives every single game? Do you consistently mute all every game? Here are just five. That's just five very basic things that if you can't even answer yes to every single one of those, you're not going anywhere. Wake up, get locked in, and if you can't honestly bring about the basic consistency in these fundamental areas, why are you trying to learn crazy new concepts and work on sophisticated mid-game macro if you can't even do these five basic fundamental things, guys? Wake up, lock in, get good at the basics. This is something that I just don't get. And feel free to just, give me some perspective here, guys. People who are, hard stuck master tier. I understand people who are new to master tier, but let's just talk about the people who are multi-season master tier. There is this kind of toxic culture in the Halo community about not wanting to ask for help or not get coaching. And it's so delusional because think about it. If you're spending thousands of hours, hundreds and thousands of hours grinding the game and not going anywhere, this is your hobby, right? This is your one sole hobby. This is the hobby that you're putting your heart and soul into. You're getting so frustrated. It's ruining elements of your life. And you're just sitting in that pit of despair and you're not getting perspective. What's wrong with you? Any other person in any other endeavor, get coaching, right? Whether you're a high-level tennis player, you're a high-level this and that, everyone's getting assistance, asking for advice. But for some reason in the Apex tiers, everyone has this chip on their shoulder where very few people actually ask for help. I've got a picture here of Tom Brady. There's this awesome, documentary. I think it's called Tom versus Time. And in this documentary, it shows behind the scenes of Tom Brady, right? And there's a sequence where he's at the prime of his career, winning multiple Super Bowls. And he goes out of his way, outside in his own personal time, in his own personal dime, getting kind of small advice and feedback on his throw from like this old timer, right? This like 80-year-old dude, and this 80-year-old dude is just saying these very small like pieces of feedback, these small little fundamentals of the game. And you would think this person winning multiple Super Bowls, being hailed as one of the greatest, quarterbacks of all time, is far surpassed that, right? He's achieved everything. He's got all these accolades. The humility required to ask for help as like a 3-time, like I think it was like 2 or 3-time Super Bowl champion, peak of his career, one of the highest paid athletes in the world, still asking for advice from anyone and anyone, being desperate for advice, desperate for help to see if he can get any little edge. It just shows the difference, right? The average Master Tier player is so fragile. Their ego is so fragile. They can't possibly ask for help. But like the most elite athletes in sports are like begging for anyone to give them even advice, even if they disagree with it. They just want different perspectives. And the common reason being, I already know what the mistakes are. But the reality is that even if you know what is happening, you may not be able to understand why and what the alternatives are and how you can fundamentally change your behavior. I've got a case study of AJ. AJ, one of the our now MLA coaches. He's a high level challenger player now in NA. And when he joined the MLA, he was I think a low GM Yone OTP, right? And think about that. There's so many people around that ELO bracket that would never ask for help. He was a Grandmaster Yone OTP. And he's like, Curtis, I just want to become a genuine challenger player who can play many different champions. And he had this approach, his mindset of he's so humble. He was already very good mechanically. Here he actually knew more about Yone than I did, but I could teach him so much more about other elements of the game. And look at him now. He's this super sophisticated player, can play like many, many different champions as a challenger, playing against some of the best players on the server, amazing player. And I'm like, this guy did it. And I'm like, but why are there players that are in like 100 LP Master Tier that think that they're just crash hot, shit hot? And it's just like, it's just fascinating to me. So like my biggest advice, and this is obviously people are going to say, oh no shit, Curtis, you're a coach and you just want my money. Well, mate, you don't even have to get coaching from me. I don't give a shit. But all I want to say, this is just genuine from the bottom of the heart. I do not want to see some 3,000 game low Master Tier player smashing their head against the wall every single game because I feel sick seeing it, mate. I feel fucking sick, and you need to get help, right? Either quit the game if you're not willing to get help, or get help. It doesn't even have to be from me. Anyone. Give me help from anyone. Just change. I don't want to see people in pain like that because we've all been there where you just feel like you're in this really, really negative kind of state of mind, and it's not a good place to be. Like, I genuinely empathize. I genuinely feel sick even thinking about the mentality that you're in right now. And I mean that. Like, I'm trying to be nice. Like, I'm not out there to make any enemies here. I'm just genuinely trying to help people. And I just get some perspective. Even if you get a little bit of perspective, you might get a little bit of coaching in one session. That's okay. But just get help, get perspective. And there are some last, pieces of important advice here. Streamer mode, mute all, don't accept friend requests. It's you versus yourself. Everyone else is a tool around you. Accept that it's a marathon, not a sprint. Treat every game, though, as if it is a sprint. You will fluctuate LP. Be okay with that. You're going to fluctuate plus minus 100, 200. That's normal. Process matters, but you can be flexible with your process. Find what works for you. Take breaks at least once a week. Enjoy the process. Have fun. Don't put a time limit on your journey. These are just a few basic things. And so, guys, if you've made it to the end of this video, right, see how it all makes sense, right? So my big controversial opinion was, Grandmaster to Challenger is harder than Low Master to Grandmaster. Now, the reason this is the case is that if you have made it to Grandmaster, you have actually raised your skill ceiling and your skill floor to a point where you realize how bad you are at the game. You realize how wide the ocean is. You realize how deep the game actually goes. There is this moment that I call kind of breaching the Master Tier brick wall. There comes a point in every kind of player's journey, or not every, but players who get to this point, this kind of mid Grandmaster point where they realize, wow, there is actually so much that I can do as a player. There is so much that is in my control. It's so much easier for you to take accountability because you've got to this point where you actually understand what the game is about. And you cringe now thinking about all the Master Tier players that complain about the game and yada, yada, yada. And this is actually why, by the way, there is this massive kind of like chasm between the high-low players in Challenger and high Grandmaster and these low Master Tier players, because the Challenger and Grandmaster players, they know it's like comical to them how many mistakes these Master Tier players are making, right? So for them, in their mind, it's relative. It's like, guys, you guys are so delusional. You're doing all these mistakes. You're thinking that you're not, but you are. That's why it's nearly comical for these players. So if you were able to make it to Grandmaster, it's actually so much easier to make it to Challenger because you have the mentality, you have the game understanding, you have the respect for the what's in your control. You have all this kind of, it's almost as if you may not have the skill now, but you have this like a kind of like this breakthrough moment mentally where it's like, wow, that's how the game works. Wow, there's so much I could be doing. And the game kind of feels like you just unlocked there's all this potential. It's like you see a skill tree, right? You don't have all the access to all these skills, but you can see it in the future. But a master tier player, they think they're at the end game. They don't see that there is potential. It's almost as if like it's like flatland or at the end of, there is nothing above the, past the horizon. So that's why. It's because that mentality is the hardest thing to develop. Once you develop that mentality and it all clicks and like you kind of start to see the matrix, the rest of it is pretty self-explanatory. You just got to keep getting in the repetitions, following the process, solving the puzzles, and the rest of that knowledge will come naturally. But for those players who haven't got to that point before, you're screwed. That's why low master to low grandmaster or to high master is the hardest, one of the hardest mentally. It's not actually hard in terms of the skills. It's hard mentally. So that's kind of my whole contention. So we're going to end this video kind of speaking to my oceanic brethren and to other people who play on minor regions such as Japan and maybe Russia and Turkey, whatever, right? Some of the average servers outside of NA, EU, Korea, China. So there is this common trope, right, in Oceanic solo queue, and it's kind of this whole meme. It's like, Ocean is the hardest region, right? And people say it jokingly as a meme. It's not really true. But it's really weird, isn't it? Because what you'll find is that there's a lot of people that go to Korea and EU from OS and actually get higher ranked in other regions, right? You'll look at like players like Shock getting Challenger in Korea and struggling in struggling in some of the ranks in OS. You'll look at like Slogdog getting Curcio getting higher ranks in Korea than they did in EU than they do in OS. And look, it's very, very complex, but just at a very basic level, some of the minor regions are harder, not because the players are really amazing, but because of the matchmaking. Because the servers are so small, you're going to be in a wide variety of lobbies that are like completely wild, right? You're going to be a 700 LP player with like a Diamond 2. You're going to be a 400 LP player, then versing like a 1K LP challenger. You're going to be in a wide variety of lobbies. So there's going to be a lack of consistency in the type of lobbies that you're going to be in, which causes you to kind of face a wide variety of challenges and problems. But when you're playing on a major region like EU, you're versing a very similar kind of iteration of players and skill set of players, and the games will play out in a relatively similar way from game to game to game to game. Whereas in OS or some of these other minor regions, that's not the case. You'll have one game where you have to be the carry, one game where you can't make a single mistake, one game where you're actually versing genuinely good players or in a high elo lobby, and then it's you're versing like a 1K LP player than a Diamond 1 player. How is that possible, right? And mentally, this is very, very taxing. And so it's difficult emotionally, mentally, and also, again, it's just very jarring to go from lobby to lobby. Now, the underlying mindset that plagues a lot of these minor regions is this inferiority complex, right? And because OS is fundamentally disrespected, like a lot of these other regions, Japan and whatever, they're fundamentally disrespected. If these players lose in some of these lobbies, they feel even worse than they would when losing in another region. I'm just using OS as an example because I play in Oceania, right? And this causes further tilt and gives you an easy way out by saying, it's just OS anyway. My team's, there's a kind of meme what happens by a lot of master tier players. It's, quote unquote OS. Like they make a mistake or they lose a game and it's like, it's just OS, it's just, don't worry guys, it's just only OS. And it kind of prevents them from actually stepping back and taking accountability for their terrible play. But the reality is the game, right? You can improve from any region. It's just your mindset is the limiting factor. Now, yes, are you going to have a lot worse quality lobbies? Yes. But is that preventing you from actually reaching a high level of play? No. Yes, you will. There will be a limit to where you can get. Sure, there will be a limit. Yes, you're going to be objectively better playing in Korea at the highest levels because people are playing at a much higher level consistently. But you will get lobbies where you have to play insanely well to win the game because of the warped matchmaking. Now, I want to use 2017 as an example. So 2017 in Oceania, this is when everyone was really taking solo queue very seriously. A lot of players were really trying to make it pro, right? 2017 Die was, for example, our team. We had, I think it was like Fantix, Destiny, Chippies, King, and Churnfire, okay? And in 2017 and even 2016, we went to our first Korean bootcamp at the end of 2016. And in 2016, no one had actually been to Korea outside of Churn. And all the players got Challenger. Think about that. None of those players in 2016 had ever been to another region before and played on another region. Maybe they played on NA back in season 3 or something. But in 2016, we all went to Korea and they all got Challenger. How is that possible, right? We were scrimming like bottom LCK teams and doing okay. We were in 2017, we went to Korea. Still the same thing. We were scrimming really good teams and beating good teams. Everyone's getting Korean Challenger, yada, yada, yada. My point being is that, you even had to take Shock as an example. Shock went to NA, I think one season, got rank 1 in NA, top 10 in the EU or whatever. You have all these players historically going to other regions, getting incredibly high ranked. So how is that possible? If the region is the limiting factor and the skill cap of how good you can be, that would never have been possible. And Oceania is a great example of, especially when in 2017, 2018, we had all of these exports. You had FBI, you had Lost, you had Fudge, whatever. You had all these players, 30, going to other regions, getting onto LCS teams, LEC teams. How is that possible? They didn't train in Korea or EU or any of these other regions. They trained in OS. So a lot of these players, especially the new generation of some of these, players who they missed the boat when it comes to the esports scene. They missed the esports prime. They're kind of left feeling salty that because they're in OS, they're stuck, right? They can never kind of achieve a high level of play. And it's not true. Yes, they are disadvantaged. Yes, they're fucking handicapped and they're in a wheelchair, whatever. But the reality is that it's all about the mentality and the approach. And this is a tough pill to swallow. People are going to say, this is cringe. Curtis, have you played solo queue? You're trash as well. Whatever, mate. Like, again, yes, there are objectively dog shit lobbies, but step up, right? There are things that you can do, and that's you versus yourself at the end of the day. And, how many of you, if you're really honest with yourself, you are not playing to your absolute limit. There are things that you could be doing better. You could be taking more accountability with your calls. It's you versus yourself. The real question is whether or not you want to do it. Okay, that's totally on you. The only other things I'll say is the less busy the time is. So if you're playing morning queue, the more carry-oriented champions you need to play. You cannot play facilitators. Raise your standards. One mistake, you will lose a lot of games in minor regions because of the disparity between matchmaking. You might be the high elo player, 1K LP player versus a 200 LP player. And if you make a single mistake in that game as a 1K LP player, you will lose. So it will really be an opportunity for you to develop discipline and a lot of awareness in your LoL states. Be good at your secondary role. Avoid morning queues. Morning queues are trash. Do not play facilitators unless you know for certain that you're playing at a very popular time in a high elo lobby. And then streamer mode and muting all is absolutely crucial in the minor regions because it's a cesspool of fractured egos and people having a lot of history with each other. Everyone in minor region, and even in all Apex tiers for that matter, but especially in the minor regions, there's like this little clique of just like people kind of know each other, and then it's just this weird little kind of cubby house bullshit mentality. And so like, especially if you don't want to get involved in that shit, just mute all, ignore everyone, play your game. It's you versus yourself. And because you're seeing the same consistent people lobby to lobby to lobby, there's so much mental baggage and history with a lot of people have with each other. Just play the goddamn game, right? You may not agree with how someone else plays the game. Just play the game and get good, right? You're making a shit ton of mistakes as well. So like, I would strongly recommend streamer mode, muting all, don't engaging with all that bullshit click stuff. So yeah, that's my video. There's a lot of stuff here. Happy to answer questions in the comments. Otherwise, I will see you guys around for another video. Cheers.